But yeah, let's just jump into what's next. So we already mentioned the qualifying offer stuff, obviously, which makes it, it makes it interesting for the Giants if they are going to look at a Corbin Burns, or I see Anthony Santander's name getting thrown around in the chat.
Yeah.
I do think Santander is less likely of those two. And I'll actually throw Max Fried in there as well, who was another qualifying offer player. Because I don't think they're going to go all in on offense. I do think if they're going to invest another qualifying offer, they're going to go for a pitcher to put at the top with Webb. That's just my opinion. Nothing really behind that other than just that's kind of what I would see them doing when they're emphasizing pitching and defense. Santander is not going to help you on defense in any regard, as much as I really like him as a hitter in particular. But, it raises the question of would they really be willing to sign this? Because I've seen Joe, we've got you in there. I flagged a couple of these. They can't afford to go after Burns. He'd lose 4 draft picks. Yeah, because they would be down their 3rd and 6th round picks as well if they did sign Corbin Burns. And I've said I don't see them doing this, but supposedly the reports are out there. They're still going after Burns. So what I would say, because I 100% agree with you, Joe, that they do need to, improve the farm system, which is one of the worst in baseball. 100% agree with that. If you're going to go after Corbin Burns, the only way that makes sense, in my opinion, is if you're either going to try and make a bold trade for a star, or you are going to be prepared to pay what is necessary next offseason and throw whatever amount of money it's going to take to go get a Vladdy Jr. or a Kyle Tucker next offseason. Because you cannot make these moves and gut your system and gut your international signing money or international bonus money, which could impact you getting a Luis Hernandez, who's supposed to be a top guy in the 2026 draft, without being willing to actually go all in on winning now. So that's the only way it makes sense, because you can't just get these guys and say, cool, we got a couple guys, now let's just try and rebuild the system and build from, it's like, what are we doing at that point?
Yeah.
So I'm not against it. I've said I don't think it's not what I would personally do. I valued the picks. As far as getting 2, I was fine with getting Adames even with the picks, but I didn't really necessarily want to get, use all 4 or get rid of all 4 picks and then the bonus money. But if they do it, like, that's how it makes sense, is if you're going to go in on winning.
Yeah, I agree. And that's why it kind of ties into what I mentioned earlier, where I'm just curious what their direction is now with this Adames pick, because your next move is going to decide a lot, whether you back out of the Burns race or whether you go all in and pursue him. Because then, like you said, depending on what you do with that, then you're basically, telling the organization that we're all in. We're not going through, a soft rebuild, so to speak. We're all in on this year. We're all in on next year. We're all on the year after, because those are the years, like you touched on, that you're sacrificing international money, that you're sacrificing draft picks. So that's the only way that it makes sense. And I think a way that you can recoup a lot of that, to try to build the farm is you trade some assets that you have and get some sort of value out of it. Which, I mean, we saw a little bit of that last year when we made the trade for Jonah Cox, for example. He wasn't really highly touted. He turned into a pretty solid player. He's a pretty solid player in the system as we speak. It's little moves like that you can try to make by flipping, some excess that you have on the team as we speak. And no, I would not trade Logan Webb for what it's worth. Just had to throw that out there.
Not unless somebody's throwing Jackson Holiday and Kobe Mayo at us.
Yeah, if you offer me Jackson Holiday, Kobe Mayo, and 6 other prospects in their their top 30 system, sure.
Who are the guys on the Sox? I know Marcelo Mayer, another guy probably, and another top guy. I mean, if they want to throw that at us, like, fine, but
I'm not doing
I'm
it
not
just
looking to trade him.
Yeah,
I'm not looking to trade him.
Not doing it just to do it. So I mean, it really depends on what you do next. That'll be what determines, the next couple years to come. And like you touched on, they'll have the money next year if they want to get a Kyle Tucker. They'll have the money next year if they want to get a Vladdy Jr.
Yeah.
So finances won't be a problem for guys like that. It's just what's the direction that you want to go. Do you want to build up through
Yeah.
free agency? Do you want to build up through, the draft and your farm? So it'll be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah. And I do want to address Grant's comment here because he said money would be tight after signing Burns. And I would say, yes, it would be tight for 2024 because I do think they want to get under the tax this season. So
Yes.
they can make it work. They can get Burns. And if he's making 35 or 32 or whatever annually, they'd be like right up around the tax this season. Now, you have tradable assets. You have Mike Yastrzemski. You have Lamont Wade Jr. You have Taylor Rodgers. Yes, each of these guys you might have to eat a tiny bit of their salary, but it's money you could get off the books pretty easy. You've got Flores. You've got there's a few guys that you could probably save a little bit on if they need to squeak themselves back under the tax.
That's the thing.
But like I said, if you're doing this move, you're doing it prepared to spend next season. Like this can't be you're doing it and next season we're going to just kind of hang out where we're at. Like if you're doing it, you better be ready to go back over the tax next season. And they could kind of jump back and forth with the tax line over the next couple of years and go over 1 year, go under in a year, go back over, go back under, because then the following offseason you have guys like Robbie Ray's contracts are up and stuff like that. So it wouldn't be that difficult for them to do that. Is just all I'm going to kind of get at here.
No, and you're not wrong. And I think that's a big piece that, we have to take into consideration because while it's not a substantial amount that you save by moving, like you touched on, a Yaz, a Rodgers, a Wade, that can be the difference between you landing, a Corbin Burns and landing, more of a middle tier starting pitcher because of just a few million to try to stay under that competitive balance tax. So it's little things like that you can do to offset the cost. Now, where they stand right now, I think Jeff Young made a post on X about it. Shout out, Jeff. That's the homie. I think we're pushing just slightly over 200 as it stands at this very moment, taking everything into consideration. So I think a move like that is inevitable.
Yeah. Seems to be that they like whether we like it or not, like it seems that Buster is just not going to take a crappy product. He's done. So, I mean, appreciate the boldness. That is something that we have constantly harped on. Pick a direction.
Yeah.
Be bold and pick a direction. This is bold. And if you go in on Burns, like that's also bold. And that's picking a damn direction. That's saying we're going to win. And that's what we want to do. So now I do think it is important. I've seen a lot of people talking about rebuilding the farm system. I 100% agree with you guys. That is something that we have constantly harped on. It is so important for sustainability purposes to build up the farm system.
Yeah.
But they do have the financial wherewithal to flex their muscles on this sometimes and try and put up a good product now and then build it up. Now, what I don't like is it is going to put a ton of pressure on them in this, especially if they do sign Burns. It is going to put a massive amount of pressure on whoever they draft with that first round pick in 2025, which, we're going to find out what pick they have in the next, next week. I think the lottery is next week. So we're going to find out next week what pick they get. And it's going to put a ton of pressure on that first round pick. It's going to put a ton of pressure on Oswar Gonzalez to be good. And it's going to put a ton of pressure on, if they are still able to afford Luis Hernandez, it's going to put a ton of pressure on him and the next year's first round pick. Like you can't whiff on those. So if they do hit on those, their system's going to be fine. Like they'll end up having a pretty solid system. But if you miss, you gutted a lot of your other assets. You removed a bunch of bullets from your chamber there. So you better you better hit on these.
No, 100%. And just taking a look at the comments, I see what you guys are saying. I hear you out 100% regarding player development, the farm system, and how it's lacked over the last few years. We need to remember the Giants just redid practically their entire front office. Posey made it an emphasis to, beef up the player development side, to beef up the scouting side, to get guys in there to focus on player development. That was some of the very first hires that we saw by him. So I'm pretty sure he understands that was a need as well. And that's something that's being addressed, and we're seeing it happen before our eyes. So yes, while looking back the last few years, draft picks may not have really hit outside of like Bryce Eldridge and Bailey and maybe Harrison. And, looking at the player development as a whole and the farm system being low, that's very well known, but that regime is gone. That is old news. Posey's beefing it up. I mean, he went out of his way to, provide an emphasis on player development going forward. So we got to keep that in mind.
And before I address Nick's comment here, one thing to throw in there is they did just bring in another outside voice to their front office.
Yeah.
What is it? What's his first name? Pike Gonzalez? Pike Goldschmidt. I'm sorry.
Goldschmidt, yeah.
Yeah. And supposedly he is insanely high regarded. I'm not going to sit here and pretend I know a bunch about his background. I'd have to do a lot more digging, but he is a little bit more on the analytics side, and he is super highly regarded in all kinds of things, including player development. A lot of people talk about him like he's on the GM track. So just put that for what it's worth. It's a good addition to the front office. Posey is balancing out his front office. I know a lot of people were upset that it seemed like he was just hiring all his buddies, and he's just hired two new people to the front office in pretty substantial roles that are kind of more analytically inclined. So I think we have a nice balance in the front office. I like what they've done with it overall. I'm going to give them their due and give them their time, because I've always said I give a front office 3 years. So I'm not going to overreact to anything today, other than, the fact that I love the Adames deal, but I'm not going to overreact to the hirings of the front office today. So
yeah.
Now let's look at Nick's, because he said, is Hoswar an absolute done deal? Is there a possibility we don't get him? And I think there is one possibility that we do not get Hoswar Gonzalez. And it's the one reason that every team, all 30 teams in Major League Baseball, would be willing to rip up and back out of all the agreements they have currently with their 2025 signing class. And that is if Roki Sasaki tells them they want to sign there.
Yeah.
Because if Sasaki wants to sign there, every team in baseball is going to rip up all their agreements and hand them their entire signing pool.
100%.
And do it. Now, my thoughts on, my thoughts on this is, if you do not have an agreement in place from Roki Sasaki before January 15th, now he's not going to sign until the 15th, because on the 15th, when signing period opens, that's when teams have their full bonus pools available for their next, the next season's bonus pool. If he signs with the team right now, right after he's posted, he can only get what they have left from their 2024 signing, international bonus pool.
Yeah.
So a lot of teams only have like $1 million, $2 million, whatever. If you wait, I think the Giants have like 5.1, because they did lose $1 million total from signing Snell and Chapman this last season.
5.1.
Yeah, so they have 5.1. So Gonzalez is probably going to get 3 and change of that. And as George mentions, Julian Barreto is on their list. Also, Gene Macaris from Aruba, who's like the number 24 prospect. Supposedly they have an agreement with. They have a lot of guys. This is a really strong signing class that the Giants have going for them. In my personal opinion, unless Roki Sasaki has told you by midnight on January 14th that he is signing with the Giants, you follow through with your deals. You cannot afford to put those guys on hold, watch them leave for another team.
Yeah.
To chase a maybe that is probably a long shot. So if Sasaki says before then, I'm coming to San Francisco on the 15th, then fine. Sorry, Gonzalez. Sorry, all these guys. Like, you back out and you get the 23-year-old potential superstar that's going to impact your team from day one. But if you don't have that agreement in place, like, to me, you just cannot take that risk. You just follow through with all your stuff and you move on. And if he wants to come for $1 million, then fine, whatever. Afterwards.
And for what it's worth, NBC Sports Bay Area had an article come out, and they say that the Giants are heavy players for Sasaki. So it'll be interesting to see how it all turns out. But I completely agree with your thought process. Right now, as it stands, I wouldn't think we'd have a great chance to land Sasaki. I have no doubt they're interested. I don't think the odds are really in our favor. I think it's like 95% we go through with Hoswar, but like you said, anything can happen. So we'll see.
You just never know, and it's the kind of talent that you know. As much as I love, I love the comps that Gonzalez gets, and I love the tools when you're reading about like 70 grade speed and 60 or 70 grade power out of like a 16-year-old shortstop, and the projection is that he's going to stick at shortstop just fine. He can be an elite defender. When you're throwing names like Francisco Lindor and Jose Reyes out there, like that is really intriguing, and that is something I want to see them follow through on. But just the reality is, if Roki Sasaki says I'm coming, like, you just do it, and you just hope he's everything that you think he can be. But ultimately, I think he's probably going to go to Boston, San Diego. I actually don't think he goes to LA. My personal opinion, I think it's San Diego or Boston.
I think
that's just my gut. Like, that's just my gut. And I'm hoping Boston, because I don't want to face them every 4 times a year in San Diego or LA. But I do think the Giants have a chance. Like, if you can sell him on this team, like, I would give them a chance, because in this market, he would make tons on endorsements. And it seems like that's what he's prioritizing. So, and I could think he could make tons in endorsements in Boston. I, of course, think he could still make tons on endorsements in San Diego. I think he'd probably make less there than he would Boston or San Francisco personally, but it sounds like that's something he's prioritizing. So I would give him I'd give the Giants a fair shot on that, especially.
Just for a quick second, just imagine the top 3 in your rotation being Webb, Burns, and Sasaki. Just imagine.
That's a team that can compete with LA.
100%.
100%. Yeah.
When you're 4th and 5th. Yeah, when you're 4th and 5th is a mixture of, Ray, Harrison, Birdsong, and Hicks. And you just kind of, play it by ear with that. Like, man, come on. That's nasty. That's nasty.
Yeah. And I'm not going to sit here and say the Giants would be favored. I'm not saying the Giants could compete with LA over 162 games. LA would win the division, 100%. But that's a rotation that's a 3-headed monster that you could throw against LA and you would have a chance. But you would have a chance.
Those 3 in your rotation, plus the Adames move, that's upper 80s as far as wins is concerned. Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, Evaldi. Mark, you know me. I've been on Evaldi. I'm not sure if he has any kind of preference in East Coast, West Coast, any of that stuff. I know he's, he pitched in Boston for a while. I wouldn't be shocked if they try and bring him back. But he is a non-qualifying offer guy that I would definitely be interested in. I like Evaldi, proven playoff track record as well. I think he's a solid 2 to 3 starter for a couple of years. He would eat up some innings, and I think he would help you win. So
yeah, for sure. Yeah, Cody's been high on Evaldi, so for what it's worth.
Yeah. I mean, obviously Burns is a better pitcher, but I just Evaldi definitely can help you.
And one thing,
this one earlier. Oh yeah, go for it.
I was gonna say one thing real quick. I think also Jeff Young touched on it on X, but it's definitely speaking numbers. It appears one of the things that Posey's prioritizing is durability, and I think you got to take that in consideration when you're looking at some of these at some of these potential, signings or acquisitions. I mean, he went Chappie. Chappie played almost every single game last year and has been virtually healthy his career. He went Adames. Adames has been pretty healthy majority of his career. Now there's, rumors with the ties to Burns. Burns has been pretty damn healthy and reliable for most of his career. So I think that says a lot about, as far as the direction is in, what they look for in some of these guys.
Yeah. So Nick brings up a really valid point. And this is part of why I think Kyle Tucker could be a big target next offseason. They need left-handed hitters. They really do. Your three, obviously they're going to have Lee up at the top of the order, more than likely at least. He'll be leading off for you. But then behind that, your middle of your order right now is, it's a lot of Ramos, Chapman, Adames, like those are three right-handed bats, and I'm not going to even mention Yaz as a potential middle of the order bat. He does not belong in the middle. So this is something that they're going to need, is to balance it out with some lefties. And obviously Bryce Eldridge, that's the one we're hoping on. Maybe he's ready, maybe he's not. But this, Nick's on to something here where a guy like Josh Naylor, I think he only has like 1 year, $14 million left on his deal. Yeah. But depending on what what you might have to give up for him, if you're not giving up an arm and a leg, like that could be a really solid pickup to stick in the middle with these guys.
That's a Maniason type of move right there.
Yeah, for sure. So I definitely like that one.
And like Clayton touched on Haesung Kim. I mean, I brought him up to you and Ricky the other day. He is lefty. He doesn't have much pop. I think he only had like 11 home runs in the KBO. But I mean, he's a solid contact hitter, great bat to ball skills. And that's one of the things that, Posey preaches. The problem is, where do you bat him in the lineup? Yes, he's a lefty. He doesn't fix that, middle of the order issue, so to speak. He'd more so be towards the top of the bottom. But no, I like the Naylor idea.